What's happening, y'all? It's Voch, the Lombardi, all that good stuff. Here with Jeff Cavanaugh. We're doing this double podcast kind of deal. So I'm Voch Lombardi, VOCHLOMBARDI on YouTube and Twitter. He's Jeff Cavanaugh, JC1053 on the tweet machine. You can check him out, all that good stuff. And hey man, it's draft season, early as hell for us. I reached out to some people on my tweet machine. They got some Cowboy questions. You know, me and you could just kind of shoot it and, you know, get some good content together. But let's figure this thing out, man. We got some stuff to talk about.
I love it. The people on my YouTube and on my tweet machine demand the collaboration. So I guess we might as well.
But what they don't understand is that the longer we keep them waiting, they'll watch us every time. Because if we do this every single day, they're going to miss some shows because they'll get sick of us. You know what I mean? So we got to do this every now and then.
That's true. Just remember, it's Voch punishing you. I've been telling him, hey, every day, let's do this. And he's like, man, no, the people, we got to make them wait.
That's totally fair. Anyway, let's get into it. So I hit you up on the tweet machine, you know, about a couple weeks ago, man. And I was just like, bruh, I hate everybody in the top 7 or so picks when it come to Cowboy land. You know, this probably like the worst year for us to be terrible because it ain't like a Joey Bosa up there. Ain't no Zeke's up there. Ain't no Jalen Ramsey's up there. Ain't no Buckner's up there. We just got a handful of guys we don't need. We got quarterbacks up there. We got receivers and an offensive lineman that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Now, what makes this interesting, Jeff, you're capping trade down.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say there's probably a bunch of Zeke's up there because they all just play running back, Voch. But go ahead.
Fair enough. But you cap and trade down, right? And I've never been on like trade down time or whatever because I'm like, man, it takes 2 teams to trade down. Nobody wants to come up and get this Jeff Okudah pick. But BYU got a kid named Zach Wilson. And if we can hang around that 3rd overall pick or so, team's going to want to jump up and get that dude. So that kind of makes it interesting for us to get up out of there, get multiple picks, and boogie. But it's just sad the guys that's up there, the guys that's going to be in that top 5, just aren't top 5 friendly. Give me your thoughts about top 5 friendly.
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. I've watched some of the guys. Obviously, it's November, but when the team is terrible, I get started early, but I'm just starting. So I know like when I'll be watching a guy and I'll put it on the YouTube or whatever, people will be like, hey, what do you think of so-and-so? What do you think of so-and-so? What do you think of so-and-so? And I'm like, hold on, it's November 18th. Like, I'm not just going to watch college football and then give you a draft report because I don't know.
Right.
So I'm just getting started. But yeah, there's no Myles Garrett. There's no... I'm trying to think which linebacker to use as the name here. Like, there's no Luke Kuechly.
Sure.
There's no Jalen Ramsey. Mm-hmm. I don't think those guys are in this draft class. So I do think you're right. So if you're a college football fan, you haven't watched a BYU game, and I'm sure a lot of people haven't, watch one. Yeah. Because the NFL loves Zach Wilson, and he is absolutely balling. Yeah. And Trey Lance, too. North Dakota State quarterback. He only played 1 game this year, but the NFL is going to like him. So, you know, I think it's still important for the Cowboys to be bad. I think it's important to be bad and parlay that into multiple picks because my dream is like my buddy Dane Brugler at The Athletic. He does this year round, right? Yeah. So he's like, I'll use his list as like a starting point. Then I'll go to Pro Football Focus's list and then I'll use the scouting list and then I'll get the Senior Bowl guys. And that's kind of how I'll watch them and how I'll rank them. Mm-hmm. He has the best 3 edge rushers as number 11, 12, and 13 overall. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, if I move down and there's no Myles Garrett, somebody might jump at 6 or 7 for a pass rusher. But if we're talking about guys that are all lumped together and in kind of the same tier, then move down. Take one of them. Get an extra pick. Now there's your corner. He's an extra pick. He was free. Now get your safety. And yeah, I think that's the way I want the Cowboys to play it. So I need them to lose. Keep losing.
Sure. So who have you watched? Let's just kind of get into it because I've watched a lot of the top 5 guys and I fall asleep on. I mean, Russo cannot play right now. Parsons ain't ready. So this is a question that I have. One of my people on the tweet machine, they was like, "How do you feel about the guys that aren't playing football this year that opted out?" I think Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase probably the only guys that can afford to not play football this year. I think Russo should have stayed. Parsons probably should have stayed. You know, some of these other guys that probably need a little more film, a little more time in the game, you know?
I think it's weird, though, because a lot of times in the draft circles, what happens is the more tape you put out, the more we nitpick guys. Yeah. So, like, I'll give you an example. Caleb Farley hadn't played this year. That's the Virginia Tech corner.
Sure.
I watched some of his tape from last year.
Mm-hmm.
He hadn't played this year, and again, I'm just plugging a buddy who I think is really good at this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He had him jump Patrick Surtain, who is playing as a prospect, because when you're playing, you start pulling them apart, and when you're not, you get caught up on the tools and the traits, and you're not out there putting out film that says you got better and that you've progressed as a football player. So they just fall back on, but that's a twitched up athlete. Oh, that guy, boy, he's got some burst. And they that's, I don't know. I think it might work for some of these guys. I really do.
Okay, but it works for them in the business side, but I don't want to be bamboozled with your terrible production. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Like as an evaluator, it sucks. Yeah. It sucks because you don't know. And like Caleb Farley's one of them.
Sure. I was watching Russo, man. Greg Russo, top edge rusher, Miami.
Right.
He's built like a skinny outside linebacker dude, but he plays like a strong side defensive end, but he's not big enough to do it. And he's like 6'7", so he can't turn really well. And he's not twitchy, but he's strong, but he's little. And I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this dude?
That's a weird combination because you want him to be like, if you're going to be a skinny guy, because when you're drawing that picture, because I actually haven't watched Rousseau yet, you're drawing me a picture of a guy that's like a taller version of like Randy Gregory was in college. He was like 6'4", 230, but because he was long and lean, he was hyper athlete. He was turn the corner guy. He was bend the edge guy. He was that kind of guy. And if you're telling me Rousseau is not, and he plays more like a big guy, I mean, that's kind of like Taco, except Taco wasn't that tall, so he wasn't as stout.
He's either little Taco or big, slow Arden Key.
Okay. Well, I don't want him.
Which is weird, and that doesn't help anybody. That doesn't help a soul here.
I don't want him.
Parsons, all of his film was weird till I watched the Memphis game, and I remember Van Der Esch or whatever, right? Like Van Der Esch, all of his film was weird till you got to the Oregon game, and he just started beating the hell out of Oregon, and Parsons was like that. So I just I don't mind these dudes going out to go get their money and not risking football to get their money. Shots out to you. But I think it's going to end up hurting them a lot because, you got media scouts and then you got dudes that watch film for real. And like media scouts, they'll have Brad Kaya, like the first guy. And then it goes on and he ends up being like a 6th, 7th round guy. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that's going to happen with Parsons or Russo, but I think they don't have an opportunity to defend themselves. You know what I mean? They don't have an opportunity to correct that, because you could be a guy that had 15 sacks. Russo had 15 sacks, but if you just beating guards that are terrible because you got 4 sacks on Florida State, then that's not good for you, fam. That's not good for your health. So I'm definitely out on those guys. I'm trying to trade back to like 17 or something and give me like a 1 tech.
So I'll bring you back to do you have a 1 tech in mind?
Marvin Wilson is a grown man, and I don't really like 1 techs for real because they slow, but his big ass can hustle, and I like him.
I liked him too. That's why I asked. I was like, because I got one in mind for you. I want to go back to Parsons real quick, because even the Memphis game, because I knew Memphis was his best game. Mm-hmm. That's what everybody was talking about, and I was like, all right, well, let me put his best on real quick.
Sure.
And so I watched the Memphis game, and even in that game, and this is what I mean when I say there's not a Kuechly, like, and Sean Lee when he's healthy, right? Back in the day.
Right.
There are linebackers that you feel like they're in the offensive meeting rooms. Mm-hmm. The ball is snapped and they're headed to the play, the end. And Micah Parsons, Micah Parsons is a freak show of an athlete.
Sure.
Dude can run like the wind, hit like a Mack truck. He's big. He's got all the things you want athletically. Mm-hmm. But I'm watching a guy that's shooting gaps and giving up big plays for no reason. Like it's almost like he's playing Jalen Smith hero ball out there. And he's not always even moving in the right direction after the ball is snapped, when his key is telling him, hey, the ball's going here. Sure. He's either late or he's false stepping. And so I'm not even saying that Micah Parsons won't be a Hall of Famer. He might be. Sure. But what's missing here is the guys that you feel like, man, that's a sure thing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to miss with him.
Yeah.
And like that's, to me, I would already be a little skeptical of a linebacker in the top 5, just because I want to spend my premier picks on the premier positions, because part of my goal is to save money. Mm-hmm. Like corners make over 20 million. Left tackles make over 20 million. Quarterbacks make 40 million.
Sure.
I want to use my high picks on that.
Yeah.
And then on top of it, with Parsons, I wish I could see that he took strides this year in terms of diagnosing plays and being in the right spot and not playing hero ball. But, his athletic gifts, he might be a super stud and somebody's going to take him early, but that's not the pick for me. Not in the top 5.
Just because you don't go top 5 doesn't mean that you're terrible. You know what I mean? Draft fans got to understand that. And Parsons, love what you're saying. But he can do it because sometimes he's right on it. Other times he's like filling his gaps properly or whatever. Because I was watching one game, it was like Minnesota or something, and I was so bored with how well he filled his gaps. But I covered Jalen, and I'm like, yo, fam, I kind of want my dude to just be boring and just play B gap. You know what I mean? Then the Memphis game, he kind of picked it up, tore it up a little bit. I like him as a pass rusher. I like him moving around. I like him when he's running. But he ain't Luke Kuechly. I need like some top tier. Yo, I'm going to hate when it's time to pay that dude because he's getting, you know what I mean? Like that guy. That's the guy that we want, and we don't have that guy. Have you watched Patrick Surtain Jr.?
I have. And same thing. He's not Jalen Ramsey,
This is what I think of him. You remember when Micah Fitzpatrick came out and people was trying to call him an outside corner, but I was watching him. I was like, you know what? He looks like a big nickel dude, I think Patrick Surtain is a big nickel dude. I don't want to say he's physical. I'd rather say he's handsy. Is a difference between physical and handsy, right?
Well, if you think you saw handsy, watch J.C. Horn, South Carolina, who I really like. That's the grabbiest dude I've ever seen.
He's up next. I'm watching him next. But Surtain is a dude I feel really comfortable with, two-way goes. I think he's quick enough, short area quick enough, lengthy, handsy. But I think he's matchup dependent, which is why I can't put him top 5. I think Jeff Okudah can go cover anybody. Marshawn Lattimore can go cover anybody. I don't want Patrick Surtain covering anybody. My analogy I use is if I'm lined up against the Bucks, he got to go cover Mike Evans. I don't want him on nobody else. If you're against Dallas, you got to cover Gallup. I don't want you on Cooper or whatever. He got to cover those kind of guys. If you got a dude that's going to like shift him to death, route run him to death, speed him to death, you don't want that dude on him. But he's really good if he just gets to play against his kind of guy. And I watched a lot of 2019 film with him and Diggs on the field at the same time. The second round cornerback Diggs was looking a little better than him for the most part. You know what I mean? He just had a better feel for the ball, a better feel for, like recognizing routes or whatever. Surtain was very physical, but he didn't have all of the shoulder up kind of stuff. Is that what you saw?
Yeah, I like him, and I think I agree with everything that you said about him. I think he's got a really good feel for the things that are important at corner. Mm-hmm. Like he's patient. He's not going to bite on things. He's going to leave himself in the right position. You're not going to lose him. Like he does everything right.
Yeah.
But I got questions about his long speed.
Yes.
And I got questions against, like you're saying, if I've got a matchup against Stephon Diggs, if I got a matchup against a great route runner, can you stick that? I don't know. So I like him. And in any other draft, if you were picking in the 20s and you picked Surtain, I'd be like, sweet, nice pick. But because we're missing our Jalen Ramsey here, when he goes in the top 10, I'll just be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to be the guy in this draft that bets that insert cornerback name is the best corner in this class. I'll let somebody else figure it out. I'll trade down and I'll be like, I'll pick the third one, and I might have the best one because I just don't know. And Farley's the same thing. Mm. Farley's a bag of tools.
Sure.
Like Farley, it's like, okay, yeah, I see the athleticism. I see some ball skills. I see the reactionary quickness. Like I see things, but I haven't seen a lockdown corner. Sure. I see a guy that somebody's going to bet on physical traits, and that's what we're talking about picking in the top 10.
We had this thing on my show called shooting dice in the bathroom, and it's just needless gambling. You know what I mean? You know those guys that be like, hey, let's get rid of Dak Prescott to bring in like Trey Lance or something. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Those guys. Like if you want to bring in Trevor Lawrence to replace Dak, I wouldn't like it, but I get it. That's Trevor Lawrence. But past that, I'm not trying to dig into the Mac and Trask and those guys. I'm not trying to shoot dice in the bathroom on that.
Well, no, because that's getting worse at quarterback on purpose.
It's getting worse.
That's the worst idea ever. The only other guy that to me is at least interesting is Justin Fields. because that dude is absolutely balling this year. And so I look at those two and I'm like, okay, like if you want to have a spirited debate about could these guys be better than Dak? Because that's where it has to start.
Sure.
If it doesn't start with, I think he can be better than Dak, then don't talk to me about the quarterback. Because if you're here just to save $40 million, fine. I'll promise you a Pro Bowl left guard and a Pro Bowl corner. If you get worse quarterback play as your trade-off, you just got worse. $40 million don't mean crap.
Yeah.
If you get worse quarterback play. So it's got to be a prospect that you're just like, dude, he's a monster. Otherwise, pay your quarterback.
I just think people get so caught up with the mystery box side of it, right? And they get so caught up in, yo, Voch, do you see what Trevor did this year? Do you see what Justin is doing this year? But like, do you remember what Dak did when he was in college? Like, you know, like it's easy to feel really good about these college guys. And my problem, Dak was on pace for throwing for 7,000 yards this year. So is Trevor Lawrence going to come in and throw for 7,000 yards? If you consider Dak to be a top 5 quarterback, I think he does. I think he's like 4. I think he's like, you know, right up under, you know, Russell, Pat, Aaron. I think he's better than Lamar because Lamar hadn't thrown the ball for more than 200 yards this year. But Kyler close. Kyler just got to keep doing it. But I know just in my personal opinion, Dak is a top 5 quarterback, right? So that means Trevor got to be top 3 to make it interesting. So you might as well just keep your picks. And just a nuanced Cowboy note, the Cowboys draft better than evaluating free agents. So I kind of just want the picks and just let them dudes draft. You know what I mean? But let's get into this though, Jeff, because and this has been getting a bunch of buzz on the you know Cowboy streets is this Penei Sewell kid from Oregon. And I think the only way that you consider him is if you can't trade back. But if you got to go with that dude, he's about the only. I feel great about this kid. Like if we had to get him, he's the only dude up there that I feel really, really good about, and we could possibly use him to any kind of capacity. What did you see when you watched him, sir?
Yeah, I think that is this will be the shortest conversation ever. I think he's the only non-quarterback premier prospect.
Sure.
I think he's the only top 5, top 10, where whatever year he came out, you'd be like, oh, yeah, top 10 pick.
Sure.
I think he's the only one. So it would be, I think a lot of people, I don't know if they would be mad about it because everybody knows they got to fix that defense. But if you somehow got stuck and you couldn't move and nobody wants to come up,
sure,
you've got to. You're picking a player for 5 years and ideally 10 years, and so you can't intentionally pick a worse player who you think is going to have a worse career for a 5-year contract just because he plays the wrong side of the ball.
Yeah.
You'd have to pick him because you could play him a left guard right now.
Sure.
You play him a left guard, and then whenever Tyron goes out to pasture or. So if somebody, I don't know, if somebody gets hurt and is going to miss 3 weeks, am I going to move my rookie around? I don't know, probably not. But when it's time, I know he can play it.
Sure. That dude's special, man. And look, this whole thing, Jeff, like he doesn't even know how to use his feet yet. Like I'm just watching him and he'll just pick him up and put him down and, you know, drop his post foot and, you know, cross his feet, stuff like that. But he's so physically gifted that he can just do it. Now, in year one, regardless of the team he goes to, I want that dude playing guard because, you know, guards and tackles are like different really. But he got the tools to play tackle at some point. But guards, you want dudes that can like fight in a phone booth. That dude is ready to fight in a phone booth today. So can you imagine your Dallas Cowboy lineup, Tyron Smith, Penei Sewell, Tyler Biadasz, Zach Martin, Terrence Steele, because apparently Terrence Steele got negative pictures of Mike McCarthy, so even when Leo Collins come back, Terrence Steele going to be starting. But can you imagine that offensive line, Jeff Cavanaugh?
I can, and then it's just a matter of which week does one of them go down. But yeah, and like I got no problem with that because that's another thing is that the Cowboys, every time they make a boring pick, boy, they'd knock it out of the park.
Sure.
Zach Martin's a boring pick. Tyron Smith is a boring pick. Travis Frederick, that's a boring pick.
Yeah.
When they pick offensive line, they nail it. And, you know, this one's going to be a nail no matter who picks him.
Sure.
But, yeah, there's nothing wrong with taking a safe pick, especially if you project him to eventually be playing a premier position, which is what he would be when he became the left tackle. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It'd be weird for a team that needs so much on defense to pick an offensive lineman in the first round. But if you were stuck, that's the guy.
If we do something stupid like win a game and we end up like 6th overall, what the hell do we do?
Hope to God that somebody takes Sewell in the top 5 and somebody takes Parsons so that maybe we could still move down and somebody could come get the 4th quarterback.
I think nobody wants to be. So it depends on what you need, really. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So like nobody wants to be like 5 to 9. I think once you get to 10, you can take whoever you want at 10 or whatever, you'll be fine. But 5 to 9, I don't think anybody wants to be there. Even if you look at the other guys in like there's Parsons, but then there's like Dylan Moses, or then there's Russo, but then you got like Basham and Kwity Paye. I don't think those guys elevate into the situation. This ain't a situation like, oh, well, at least I get Derrick Brown, or I get Isaiah Simmons, or I get, CJ Henderson. This is probably the worst top end situation I've seen in a draft, Cowboy wise, in a long time. But, like the late first is good. Second round, third round guys probably going to be good this year. But the top of this thing is so stupid, man.
I agree. I think, and it's not talked about that much because it's not that big of a difference.
Yeah.
But part of the thing is, if you have a guy that you think in a normal draft would be the 20th best player in the draft and he's the 6th best player in this draft, man, when you have to pick that guy 6th, he makes a lot of money.
Sure.
And there's a salary cap. I want to pay him less. Sure. I don't want to pay him as a top 6 pick if I don't think he's that sort of player.
Do you think somebody likes Jamar Chase enough to pull a Julio Jones and come get him?
Maybe. I mean, even on a team with, Justin Jefferson was technically the leading receiver, but like Jamar Chase was kind of the man, even with Jefferson on the field. So, maybe. And this is going back to what you were saying about the opt-out guys. I hate that Jamar Chase isn't playing because you know what bothers me about Jamar Chase is going to bother me forever?
What's that?
Cameron Dantzler.
Yeah.
Locked him up.
The only guy to ever do it too. Plus you want to know, can Jamar Chase play without Joe Burrow? And all that help around him. Yeah, all that.
For sure. Yeah, I would love to see more of him. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the guys that I think a lot of people are probably going to see him in this class as a top 5 player. So if somebody wants to come get him, I can't imagine doing that for a receiver.
Sure.
Like Julio was different because Julio was literally the prototype.
Sure.
Julio was like, hey, how tall do you want a receiver to be? 6'3", done. Mm-hmm. What do you want him to weigh? What was he coming out? Probably 210. Just make him perfect, please.
Sure.
All right, what do you want him to run? 4.3.
On a bad foot. He ran a 4.3 on a bad foot.
Vertical? Make it over 40 inches. Done. Where do you want him to play? Bama and show out. Done. Like he was a perfect prospect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Damn
Chase ain't gonna test like Julio Jones tested.
I just think when it comes to drafting, I think so many teams sat so that other teams can fly. You know what I mean? I just think nobody wants to really give up draft capital like that unless it's a quarterback, or just rather moving into the top 5. Like if you at 17 moving up to 15, I think that's different. But for the most part, we don't really see teams going up into the top 5 to get something else besides quarterback or anything like that. And something else, that's another question here that I think is good for the Cowboys. Most of the guys we need, or just places that we need, they aren't really valued as first round guys. Like I like Marvin Wilson as a 1-tech, but he's not really a pass rusher, but he's a grown man. But those type of 1-techs don't end up being first round guys. Most of your favorite safeties in the past few years or so, they end up being late first, second round guys or so. You know what I mean? So let me ask you this: what targets are we looking for? If we could trade back, right? If we could trade back into the mid first, late first, second round, what targets do we look for around there?
So I think the Cowboys are historically a fan of, and I kind of like the idea of, can I pick the first guy at a position? Mm-hmm. And so for the Cowboys, what about safety? If you go all the way back to 2025, and I haven't watched him yet, but I think some people will say the TCU Morrig is the top safety in the draft, whatever. Yeah. But how about the first safety off the board? That to me, sweet. The first pass rusher off the board, if you're talking about it like 10 or 12.
I don't want that dude though.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like you're not going to feel great. You know what? I guess I should say go back to 17 and take the third pass rusher off the board because I don't know which one's going to be the best. You just take your shot on one of them. Yeah. Defensive tackle is tough because I think what we're going to find is that Barmore is probably going to be the best defensive tackle in this class.
Sure.
And like I love the way he plays. I love how strong he is. I love the motor.
3 tech to you?
Can you ever picture him having an 8-sack year?
That's what I'm saying.
I can't.
That's what I'm saying. So him and Marvin in that same conversation. Bama got another dude that's just another big body kind of cat that's just in there. Like they're not gonna be these early guys that we're used to when it comes to like Bama dudes. He's not like Jonathan Allen or like Deron Payne or anything like that. But we got a lot of Deshaun Hands and Ashawn Robinsons this year. You know.
Yeah. You know who's fun that if you were picking in the 20s, I wouldn't mind is Joseph Ossai, the Texas edge.
Okay.
He's fun.
He's on my list.
They list him at like 6'4", 253, but Dane has him at 6'2", and so I promise you he's going to be 6'2". So like he does not have the 6'5", 270.
He's a little
but what he does at Texas is it's a four-man line, but he's the stand-up guy on one end. And he'll occasionally put his hand down, but that dude plays hard.
Motor dude.
And for a guy, you know, if you're looking for a guy that when they're going to run right at him and you're like, okay, build me a guy that can stop that. You'd be like, all right, give me long arms, give me 270 pounds. And in his case, he's 6'2", 255, but at least in college, he's really good at beating them to the punch, at controlling blockers. And these 300-something pounders, and he's 250-something pounds. So, you know, some people will probably call him a 3-4 outside linebacker, but that's okay, especially right now with the Cowboys, right?
Sure.
And if you want to play 4-man line, I got no problem playing him at right defensive end. If you want to play a 3-man line with a stand-up edge and you want to play him as a stand-up edge, I think Ossai is fun. He can run. He's got power in there. He can turn the corner a little bit. I think the only thing working against him as being like a top 15 guy is that he's not built like most pass rushers.
Sure. So how do we balance that, right? Because you just brought this up. We're trying to move into a new scheme. We're not having none of that this year, though. But even if you look at the guys that we drafted last year, it doesn't seem like we were all in one direction. Like Bradley and I looks like a 3-4 guy, but Neville Gallimore is clearly a 4-3 penetrating type of dude. He's not a 2-gapper guy, you know? So just moving forward, like, do we just keep trying to run 4-3 or do we keep it hybrid? Do we purge these dudes? Because if you draft Marvin Wilson, Marvin is a perfect 2-gapping. Him and Barmore, like hands, strength, punching, shedding. That's what they do. But they're not penetrating guys. Kwity Paye, you could put him at like 3 tech and he can penetrate. So I don't want to miss out on no top tier. Look, just like we talked about last time, right? Mike McCarthy was like, yo, fam, we just going to take players and we going da-da-da-da-da. We're not going to be married to a system. That sounds good.
Players, and I'll fit the scheme to the player.
That sounds good, but there's no way we can just mismatch D linemen like that. So how do you think we do moving forward?
Well, to me, the first thing is I've actually always kind of been anti like, oh, that guy is a 3-4 player. He can't play in a 4-3.
Sure.
Like the idea that TJ Watt in Pittsburgh's job is way different than the weak side defensive end for the Cowboys. Sure, his job's different on like the 12% of plays that they drop him. Yeah. He's a pass rusher. He's playing the edge. They're doing the same job. Sure. Like I don't know. That's my thing. Now, when you do start asking linemen to, instead of have 1 gap, do 2 gapping, now you're asking them to do a totally different job that the Cowboys didn't have the personnel for. I think my answer would be, and this won't happen in the NFL because I think we talked about this before, nepotism is king. People hire their friends. People hire the people that they like or that they were familiar with, or in McCarthy's case, a guy that he once worked for, so maybe wanted to do him a solid. I can't – in the NFL, you should never hire a coach that walks in and says, this is what my defense does.
Yeah.
Every coach you hire should walk in and say, who do you got? What's he best at? Okay, well then here's what we'll do. Because otherwise you're not a great coach. You're a dude who learned one thing, and that's the thing you do.
Sure.
It shouldn't be up to players to adapt to what your coach wants to do. It should be up to coaches to adapt to what your players can do. That's why New England does well, even though they draft like crap, because they'll figure out what guys can do and they'll make it work. And so, like, what is the answer? What are they going to run? I think you always got to build your team more like a 4-3 team, just because 70% of the snaps in the league right now, you're going to be in a 4-2. That's what you're playing, because you're going to be in a nickel. You're going to have 3 corners, 2 safeties, because they're going to have 3 wide receivers, and you're going to play with 6 guys in the box. So I would always build it expecting that I'm going to have 2 defensive tackles, 2 edges, 2 linebackers on the field, and that's my plan.
So do you think that Jerry and them were wrong for giving Mike McCarthy freedom to hire his guys? Because all he did was hire his friends. Like that's all he did. Like, at least when you hear Jerry talk, he'll go, hey, man, I'll look at Lincoln Riley. I'll at least go look at one of these college dudes, one of these young hotshot cats. He even went so far as to say, hey, man, we like John Kitna because he does high school things. That was weird when he said it, but he said it. But Mike McCarthy just kind of brought in a bunch of old dudes that, you know, that have been in the league for a while. And I can't stand it because Eberflus is over in damn Indy just tearing it up. So do we give the power back to the Joneses in them? Like
that's the hard part, because my initial answer would always be
no.
If you hire a head coach and you do not empower him to be the head coach, I mean, he's already failed. You've already neutered him. But at the same time, I don't want my head coach to hire bad coaches.
Sure.
So like it's one of those things where if this were a regular organization where you had a general manager who wasn't also the director of marketing and had all these other things going on, and he was an actual just general manager.
Right.
And then that general manager said, hey, Mike McCarthy, I want you to be the head coach. And Mike said, all right, here's who I want to bring. And you say, well, here's the thing. I actually have the numbers on Mike Nolan as a defensive coordinator, and he sucks, so you can't bring him. Do you have another guy? Like, yeah, I would love it to go that way. But because it's Jerry, I don't want to hear pretty much anything that is Jerry forced this on a coach, because that's awful. Like, but now you have Mike Nolan. So yeah, in this one case, I wish Jerry would have said, not Mike Nolan. We have COVID. He's going to try to do way too much. There's no time for it. Our players aren't suited to it. This literally makes 0 sense, and it goes counter to exactly what you just told me about team building, about fitting the scheme to the players. It's all lies if you bring me Mike Nolan. Yes, I wish one time Jerry would have done that and then never done it again.
And forcing Kellen seemed to be the only thing that has worked out so far. So it is what it is. Speaking of which, do you think Joe Philbin can beat Mike McCarthy in a fist fight?
No, I don't. I think Mike, he does have drink face. Like he's, it's always kind of reddish, and he's always kind of breathing hard.
Brawly guy, yeah.
But I think there's a Northeast rage in there.
Yeah.
So like I think now Mark Colombo could whoop
everybody.
Mike McCarthy. Yes, everyone. Mark Colombo, when I read the story, and I hate that people are like, it's not true. I'm like, well, you're not going to take that from me. It's been reported. I'm going with it.
Yeah.
Mark Colombo is probably the last coach of any position in the league I would fight. Like I've met him. I've hung out with Colombo. He's a crazy person. And like, he's not one of those guys that left the league and lost 150 pounds. He left the league and lost like 50. Like, he's got to be 260.
He's still swole. Yeah.
And that man didn't just listen to angry music. He played angry music. Him and Leonard Davis and Corey Proctor, they had a metal band.
Wow.
Like, that is a former lineman with long arms that's super strong, that's 260 pounds, that's just over the age of 40, that has rage inside of him. He's the last person you should ever fight. If there really was a fist fight, Joe Judge would be in the ICU. That's how I know there wasn't a fight.
You gotta leave those dudes alone, man. Certain folk you just gotta leave alone, man. Somebody asked me, I haven't watched cornerbacks because it's real hard for me to just watch corners because I get so bored with them. So I just normally wait till I have to. But safeties and corners suck, man. But do you have a power ranking for Sean Wade, Surtain, J.C. Horn, just the top few corners or so? Because Cowboys are so corner needy, I guess.
So I've only seen Shaun Wade live this year. I haven't studied him yet, but I know that it's weird because he's going to have a really good rest of the year. Because what happened and Shaun Wade is Ohio State, but a year ago, if I have this right, he was the slot guy, and boy, people loved him. He played so well.
Sure.
And I believe he's the one who got called for targeting in the Clemson game that gave a free first down that probably shouldn't have happened, and then ejected a good player, and then Clemson got to win that game and lose the national title game. I think Ohio State might have beat LSU, but don't worry about that. This year, Shaun Wade's playing outside. And I have to pull up their schedule. I forgot what game I was watching. But a random guy, like basically me, kicked his ass.
Penn State dude?
No, worse school than that.
Wisconsin?
It might have been Penn State. I don't remember. Penn State does suck, though.
I don't know about like March or something. I have all this information about March.
Yeah, I'd forget, but somebody's going to be watching this and be like, yeah, I know. I watched. And he was like, he got mossed on one play, and then he got run by, and it was like, holy cow.
It's definitely
so he was considered a no doubt first rounder as a slot guy. Now he's playing outside and he's having some struggles, so he's going to have to figure that out. I'm tempted to put J.C. Horn as my top corner.
Yeah,
I'm tempted because I think he's got a lot. First, I like my corners to be incredibly cocky, and I like when I can see it on tape. And he's got, like, my favorite thing is Jair Alexander walking like a pigeon or whatever he was doing, his little weird strut.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing. Corners have to be cocky. And J.C. Horn's cocky. He is super physical. He's athletic. He's quick. He's fast. If he tests well, I'm going to fall in love with him. His one thing is he is maybe the grabbiest corner I've ever watched. He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to, but he does, and it's how he plays. And so in the NFL, that's going to draw flags, so we're going to have to dial it back. But I like him a lot because I love the demeanor, I love the confidence, I love the physical traits, I love the way he plays the ball in the air or at the catch point when the ball arrives. He's going to time it up perfectly. So I love a lot about him. The only thing I don't like is how many PI flags and how many holding flags are we going to get. Whereas with like Surtain, I got some questions about the long speed.
Sure.
I got some questions about covering the smaller guys.
Everybody got questions, man.
Yes. And with Farley, I got questions about like everything. Yeah. I don't know.
IQ stuff.
I try so hard.
Yeah.
And tell me if you struggle with this ever.
Okay.
I try so hard to ignore everyone's rankings.
Yes.
I try really hard. Like I'll use them as a starting point to watch tape.
Mm-hmm. I just need a list of people. Yeah.
Every year I'll break my own rule on at least one or two players where I'll be like, this dude can't play. Mm-hmm. Like I wouldn't pick him. Yep. And then you'll like everyone's rankings is like, oh, he's the 19th best player in the draft. Oh, he's 21st best player in the draft. Oh, I got him in the early second. I'm not as high as some others. And I'm like, crap, I'm the only guy in the whole world who thinks he can't play.
Sure.
And then I'll be like, all right, let me move him up like to the third. So I still hate him more than everybody else. I did with Solomon Thomas. I watched Solomon Thomas in college and I was like, he can't play.
Oh goodness.
I was like, he's a little three technique. He's not winning on the edge.
Yep.
And so I even have on my board, I didn't have the nuts to take him out of the first round because I knew he was going top 10.
Sure.
So I put him down lower than the other ones underneath it all, and I put his name, and then underneath it I typed little tiny three tech, no idea why people like him.
Yep.
I even put a note in there for myself and for people to see later. I think he sucks, and I put him in the first. So that's where I'm going to end up with Farley because right now, from what I've seen, I'm like, that's not a first rounder. But the whole world's going to tell us he's a top 10 player, and hopefully I'll stick to my guns.
I just got to trust myself, man. You know what I mean? And for the most part, I get it right. But like you say, like every time there's always somebody that just kind of, you know what I mean? Like my biggest video that kind of blew me up. It's not my biggest no more, but when I first started doing this, Solomon Thomas, but I was like, there's no way people think this dude is better than McDowell. Malik McDowell from Michigan State that year. There's no way and Malik didn't play a snap of NFL football, and I still think he's better. But
and you're right, he was a better player. He was a head case is the problem.
He was just a little weird. But you just got to stand on that, man. You just got to stand on it. And I'm not like giving you advice or nothing because I still look at a draft board, still see somebody that I know I don't like, and still comply to that notion of like media scouts and what they do. I may not like it. I may not like it, but you know, it just is what it is, dude. We'll get better at it.
Yeah, I have the same advice for everybody. Believe yourself. You know what you're watching.
Sure.
You know.
But you know, we've been talking about a lot of corners, man. Like there's a whole gang of corners this year. Like I just want to ask you about Georgia's secondary, where apparently every damn body going pro. You seen that?
Yeah, and I haven't seen him yet. And I'll tell you what, I would not be surprised at all if there's a guy, because what I've just watched what is considered the top 3 corners so far, and I'm just working my way down. It's November 18th, people. Chill out.
Yeah,
Cut me some slack, okay? Yeah. Check in with me in January. Let's see what the list looks like.
February.
I wouldn't be surprised if I'll see a couple of corners along the way where I'm like, oh, yeah, this dude can play.
Yeah.
And, like, my draft board ends up saying J.C. Horn, 1-2. Sertan 1-2 or a 2 guy I haven't watched yet 1, and he's the top guy. Like I wouldn't be surprised at all. So I know the Cowboys are going to be swimming in that pool, so that's kind of what I'm trying to work through pretty quickly. Try to kind of do it a guy a night. That sounds weird to say as a sentence. But
you're a wild dude, man. You better be safe out there in the streets.
I'm getting there, and I'm going to get there, and I would not be surprised. Like Farley, I think is going to be my guy this year, and maybe I'll catch, because I'll watch everything I can find from 2019, and maybe I'll come back and be like, oh, my bad. No, he's really good, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's my guy that everybody's just like top 10 player, and I'm like 4th rounder.
Yeah. Fair enough. For everybody that's watching on my side, y'all go tune in to Jeff's stuff. He does a lot of draft work. He's breaking down people as we go. Voch is doing the same thing. So, and we're breaking down different people, and I think that's fire. So I got a list of people. I'll read off to your people, you know, who I got coming up next. Who are you watching in the next few videos, or just watching in general? Who you watching?
I gotta be honest. So I'm kind of making it up as I go because I have access to a top secret stash. And as that film comes in, and I do think you can do corners and receivers and running backs. A lot of times I think you can scout those guys off of like TV copy or whatever you can find.
Yeah.
But when it comes to line of scrimmage play, I like to have the all 22 stuff.
Yes, sir.
So it's kind of, I look through and I'm like, all right, what out of what I have has highly considered prospects on it, and bam, that's what I'll click on. So you go down your list, and I'm gonna pull up my stash and see if I can come up with an idea of who to watch next.
I'm going to. Okay, so we've already watched. You know, pretty much, you know, the top 5 or so guys or whatever. Not the quarterbacks though, because I normally save them till later. But I
hate quarterbacks.
I hate them, man. But we've watched Sewell, Russo, Basham, Parsons, Surtain, Wilson. I love Marvin Wilson. He's my early 1 seed guy. That's a grown man. And Alex Leatherwood has let me down. Have you watched him, Alex Leatherwood?
I have not. I haven't touched offensive line yet, other than watching some of Sewell enough to be like, oh, yep, he's good.
I had this quote that I did on my live stream, and I put it on Twitter because I thought it was so profound. I said it just like this. I said, yo, Alex Leatherwood is way too big to be playing like Jonah Williams. Because when you watch somebody his size, you think Orlando Brown, but then he moves really well. Then you go, oh, Mekhi Becton. But then you find out that he's kind of soft, and you go, big Jonah Williams. You see what I'm saying? So when you watch him, you're probably going to get a lot of that. And upcoming, I got film on Andre Cisco, Paris Ford, all the corners that we talked about today. But Kwity Paye is a guy that I'm very excited to look into. And Rashawn Slater, apparently he beat the hell out of Chase Young last year, and I want to see what that's about. He's a tackle from Northwestern. So that's what I got coming up.
Okay, I'm going to be watching someone that plays for either Western Kentucky, Wake Forest, Vanderbilt, UTSA, Troy, Texas State, Texas, Tennessee, TCU, Southern Mississippi, South Carolina, SMU, Rutgers, Penn State, Ohio State, Nebraska, Mississippi, Miami, Louisville, Louisiana Tech, Houston, Georgia, Florida. What is this? Georgia. That's Georgia's offense. So, Florida. Who's their edge? Florida's got an edge. Florida's got a defensive end. Don't worry about it.
I know they got a tackle, but it's early.
Whoever Florida's defensive end is, he's next, because I got Florida's defense versus Mississippi. And so whoever Florida's defensive end is, and I'll find his name in a second, and that'll be who my next guy is.
Alrighty then. Hey, for everybody that's watching on my side, that is Jeff Cavanaugh. You find him JC1053 on the tweet machine. Go over to his YouTube page, show him some love, subscribe and all that, because you don't just want to be watching and not subscribing, you know what I mean? And hit the like button for him and all that stuff. And if you on Jeff's side, I'm Voch Lombardi, VOCHLOMBARDI. We do similar things, you know what I mean? We do similar things. We're going to be breaking down a lot of draft. We even have Cowboy takes because, I mean, there got to be a season. But once that season's over, we're going to go full blown draft. And hey man, you know, we're gonna meet up in May and see what happens. All right, Jeff, you got any closing thoughts?
No, other than Florida doesn't have an edge. I was wrong. No Florida edge. Look, just
they got a fat kid in the middle. There's a tackle or something.
Subscribe to Voch, subscribe to me, and so I'll be watching something.
Yep.
I'll be watching something. Yep. And you can watch along. It'll be great.
Something relevant. All right. And we're going to rendezvous back here, and it should be fun in April or May. And Jeff, we're going to
tomorrow. Me and Voch will be back tomorrow.
I got to commit to it. We're but I'm lying to you. We're not coming back tomorrow. But y'all hold it down for the Doski Woski and the Peasky Wheesky, man. Till next time. Salute.